I don't think I've ever had an introduction that has been quite that musical. So I'm here to talk to you about hacking, but hopefully by the end of it you won't have such an allure to it or think that it's as complicated as it is, because what I'm kind of here to do is take the mystery out of hacking so you kind of understand what actually it is and what's involved with it, and hopefully be able to apply that in some new and interesting ways. So let's kind of talk about the way most people perceive hacking. If I say hacking, you probably think of something like this, right? This is something that like WSB would show as like that little graphic up in the corner if they're talking about info hacking. Another really popular one is the guy in the ski mask typing at a computer. First of all, hackers don't type like this, they type like this. And secondly, you don't need to wear a ski mask, you're at your own house. So that's just stupid. Or if you're watching a movie like Skyfall, you'll see like a bunch of computers and they try to like make it look crazy and you'll have like 6 screens. First of all, those are just like raw computers. Like if I remember Skyfall correctly, they're like in the Mediterranean. That's terrible. You need like cooling and AC and all sorts of stuff to make a data center work. So that just wouldn't even work, let alone be useful for hacking. And then sometimes I talk with people and they're like, oh, you must just think in some weird codes and your screens must just be covered with gibberish. And no, that's not the case. None of that stuff is actually what hacking is. And I think it's important to address this because, well, for 2 reasons. One, like if you hack into a bank, that's a lot of work. It's not like 30 seconds typing really fast while dubstep plays in the background, right? And then you're like, I'm in. They always say I'm in. I don't know why. That's so lame. Like, it's a lot of work to do that. And so it kind of like glosses over and does a disservice to think that like you could just do it in 30 seconds. And the other side of this that I think is important for you all is that it makes hacking some artificially unobtainable thing, right? Like, oh, I can't do that. That's just that weird guy or that smart girl who knows this thing, and oh, they're just get computers. I could never do that. That's crap. If you think you can't do it, you'll never even bother trying it. And when we kind of cloak hacking in this mystique, it really is preventing a lot of really smart, cool people from even trying. And that's really sad. So I thought with this talk what I'd do is I'd talk to 3 different hacks that I've done and talk about what I did during those hacks and how I actually broke the systems. And then we can kind of dive in and learn a little bit more about kind of the process of this. So the first hack, believe it or not, was here at Walton High School. I was a freshman. I was in Miss McKinney's geometry class, and I was a slacker, and I was bored, and I didn't want to listen to her, and I had a calculator. And I'm sure you guys don't have TI-85s anymore. What do you guys use now? I don't even know. Wow, yeah, see, state of the art. So I could play Pac-Man, and that was pretty awesome. And so my friend JR gave me Pac-Man, and so I'm sitting in a trailer out back by the baseball fields playing Pac-Man, and JR is like, I can get a higher score than you. And I'm like, no, I'm going to totally win. And so when I would play the game, I would notice that it would create a bunch of matrices would be stored in the calculator. And I thought that was kind of weird, and if I deleted them and then I restarted the game would take a little bit longer, but then it would start playing and the matrices would be back. And it's like, what are these things? So I started looking at them, and this is what it looked like. I've kind of oriented it, and it kind of just looks like gobbledygook, but I started noticing kind of reoccurring patterns. 1s, a lot of 0s, some 3s, and so I'm going to go ahead and colorize it. And we can start to see what the matrix actually is. It is the game board. So the 0s are dots, the 1s are walls, and the 3s are like the little superpower balls. And so that's actually what would happen. When the game would run, it would read over this matrix, and the first 0, 0, it would like draw a wall. And then if it was a pellet, it would draw a pellet. And it just kind of iterates over all of the elements in the matrix and draws it on the screen. And so basically, these matrices that were created when the game started, those were the levels, those were the maps. And so I went back to it and I said, okay, here's what it is, and I edited it, and you'll notice I put a 1. I put a 1 in the middle right where the ghost is. And so when the game started it and I played it again, the ghost is now trapped. The ghost can't get out. The ghost can't eat me. And JR is one of these guys that's just amazing at video games, regardless. But I was able to get a higher score than JR because I didn't have a ghost chasing me the whole time, just because I hacked the matrix. So it all worked. So The next story I want to tell you about was while I was a student at Georgia Tech. So it was really late because I procrastinate. I had procrastinated two things. I had procrastinated my laundry and I had procrastinated studying for a physics test. And so I'm up late and I desperately don't want to do physics because I'm a procrastinator. So like, hey, it's only 2 a.m. I can wait till 3 a.m. before I have to start looking at this. So I'm doing laundry and I'm thinking and I'm looking, and we have these laundry machines and they're kind of these, instead of these coins that you would put into them, we actually had a reader on the wall, and we had these student IDs that basically had mag stripes on the back, like a credit card. And so what happened is that you would select what washer you wanted to use, you would swipe the card, that reader would talk back to some sort of centralized system to be like, hey, Billy's trying to do laundry, he needs to spend $1, does he have $1 in his account? And then that centralized system would call back and say, yeah, Billy totally has $1 in his account, let him go. And then what happens is it would somehow tell the washing machine, let Billy wash. And so when I was really bored and I was watching this, I'd go over and I'd buy laundry, and then I'd go back to the washing machine, and the washing machine had $1 kind of on a little screen on it. And then as soon as I bought it, it would go $1, 75, 50, 25, wash. And it was as if I was dropping quarters in the machine. Now, these things were super old, and they had no concept that they were attached to some sort of network. And what was literally happening was that the reader on the wall, when it would have to tell the washing machine that I had bought wash, it would send these pulses to the washing machine as if I were depositing quarters. And that's why the washing machine would say $1, 75, 50, 25, you can now do a wash. Because for all it knew, I had just put 4 quarters into the machine. So this was kind of interesting, and I was thinking about this. So I looked at the back of the washing machine, and there was a wire coming out of the back. And I'm like, well, let's see what's in there. So I got a pocket knife, and I cut away all the insulation, and I found some wires. There were 4 wires in there, and I'm like, let's start crossing some of these and see what happens. And so I started crossing wires, and then on the washing machine I was doing in it, it said $1, and then suddenly, on like the third one, it goes 75. And I'm like, wait a minute. Click it again, 50, 25, free wash. And so what happened was that I was basically simulating quarter pulses going to the washing machine. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I now have free washing. Now, it's kind of funny that Georgia Tech did not catch on until much later, because I could not actually get to the dryers. I could only get to the washers. So for a semester, all I did was pay for a bunch of drying. I never paid to use the washing machine, which you think would have tripped some sort of weird fraud detection system, right? Like, how is this guy never using a washing machine, but he always needs to use the dryers? So I went on to the next level, which is, what about this little centralized reader that's talking to the database? Oh, so there. I pretended to be the reader, and I sent pulses directly to the washing machine. So next thought was, well, can I pretend to be that centralized server? Can I somehow get in between the reader and the centralized server, so when it says, hey, Billy would like to spend $1 on something, does he have the money, that I could send back, Billy totally has that money in his account. Billy has millions of dollars in his account. Don't worry about it, right? So after thinking about it, and I read a lot of, I had to go, well, I'm kind of glossing over it. I had to go figure out how did the reader and the centralized server communicate? What protocol did they use? How did it authenticate who I was? And I went and I read a whole bunch of books to try, and manuals on this system to try to figure this stuff out. But eventually what happened is that I was able to pretend to be the centralized server and say to the reader, hey, Billy can have this laundry. Now, what I found out, though, is that this system wasn't just used for laundry, it was used for vending machines. Awesome. So now I can be in my dorm room and make all the, vending machines in the library spit out a Coke. That's pretty cool. And then it's like, well, wait a minute, this thing's used for building access. Awesome. I can get into the CS lab if I left my backpack in there. Or, oh, I could get into this dorm room. Or, oh, wait, I could get into the nuclear research facility that's on campus. Oh, crap. I've stumbled into something bad because I found this system and it has flaws, and now I need to tell people about it. And so I had kind of this thing of, how do I let people know that this system that they're trusting actually has a lot of flaws, and what can we do to fix it? And That's a very long story. I can't fit it in an 18-minute TED Talk. It involved lawsuits. It involved being scared and young. But ultimately, it involved the company hiring me to help them essentially fix this system. So it was a good story, but an interesting experience, but a positive experience at the end. So the final hack I wanted to talk about was one that I was paid. So after I got out of college, I went to work for a startup, and we built software that did security testing, but we also got paid to do security audits, which we call those pen tests or penetration tests, but security audits is kind of what we like to say, because it sounds less conceited, right? Like, oh, I'm a hacker who does penetration tests. It's like, no, I'm just a dude who works at an office and we do security audits. So there was a restaurant a fast food chain, and every year they do a kind of like a giveaway, coupon giveaway and cars and stuff like that, and it's based on a board game. And you go there and you can get, fries and drinks and get little tickets and see if you get stuff. Well, they also have an online version of this board game on their website. And so what happened is that we were paid to basically say, is this thing secure? So if you went to the website, basically in your browser you would download this little game, and when you played the game, you're playing the board game. Now if you won, what happened is we noticed your browser would send a message back to the website that basically said, yeah, Billy just won, give him a cheeseburger, and then the server would, like a minute later, you'd get an email saying, hey, here's your coupon for a free cheeseburger. I'm like, this is kind of interesting. So what we noticed is that if you lost the game, nothing happened. The game didn't send anything back to the web server. So it's not broadcasting out, Billy is a loser, Billy can't play this game. It just wouldn't tell anybody. So that was kind of interesting. So we thought, well, what happens if I play the game again and I win the same prize again? What does the message look like? And we saw that the message was different. It was kind of this just encrypted blob of goop. We couldn't really figure out what was in it, but we noticed that it was changing. And then sure enough, a minute later, I'd get an email saying, hey, you just won another cheeseburger. And so I realized what was happening here is that there was actually, inside this game that's being sent to the browser, there was some sort of encryption key. And there was code inside that game that if I won the game, it would activate this little kind of, give Billy a reward kind of subroutine. And that would basically create a message, encrypt it, and send it back to the server. And that was the encrypted thing I was seeing. Well, and so we saw it go through. Well, what that means is that everything that's needed, like the server doesn't know whether I won. It's just given this message saying, Billy totally won, give him a cheeseburger. And so what I realized is that we could take this game that's being delivered to the browser and pull out the code that forms the message that Billy won a cheeseburger and the encryption key that would encrypt that message and pull it out and stick it in a new game. And that new game doesn't have to have a whole board game system. It can be really stupid. It can just have a bunch of buttons called, this is the button for a cheeseburger, this is the button for fries, and this is the button for a milkshake. And whatever button you pushed, surprise, you just won. We would take that, encrypt the message, and send it, and then I'd get a message. So we basically made a game that we like to call Billy Wins a Cheeseburger, and you could just keep pushing a button, and you didn't have to do anything. There was nothing to win. You just would get coupons for getting cheeseburgers. Cheeseburger, by the way, you get really fat if you just eat cheeseburgers. Have an active lifestyle. So we, of course, told the company about these flaws, and they resolved them because they were paying us to figure these things out. But in all of these stories, hopefully you see a kind of a common trend, which is that there's no crazy movie-style hacking stuff, right? Like, I don't have like 30 seconds to get through some login prompt or like a bomb's gonna explode, right? There's none of that. There's none of this crazy acrobatic. It's depressing. You all are probably too young to have seen Mission Impossible, but it's really good and you should watch it. But none of this crazy acrobatic Mission Impossible style stuff. It's really fundamentally thinking and researching. Lots of thinking and lots of reading really dusty manuals. Let's talk about that for a second. So when I was trying to figure out how that game worked, they sent a game down to the browser. It was written in Flash, which is probably a technology y'all don't know, but it doesn't matter. I had a Flash game and I needed to figure out what was inside it, which means I had to go digging around Adobe's website to find the specification of what is this file, how is it structured, how does all that game information get in there, how does it talk back to the server. I had to go read a bunch of information. When I was doing that stuff at Tech, right, how did I figure out which wires to cross? I mean, I happened to get lucky and cross some, but I went back to make sure I was doing the right ones, and so I went and I found a forum where repairmen were talking about this system, and they uploaded the manual on how these things are wired. And sure enough, on the circuit diagram was a little thing that said these are the 5 wires that are coming from the card reader, and here's what the red wire means this, and the green wire means this. So I basically found it in a manual. All of this stuff, everything that I've learned, it's always been having to go out, read a bunch of information. So being able to research and just be fine reading really, really dry, boring technical specs is key. But then you need to synthesize this information. You start actually kind of doing applied critical thinking. So let me read all this information and synthesize it down to some few key facts. And let's figure out which ones are the most important. Let's start thinking about maybe, given that I know how these parts work, how does this system, what do I think this system looks like? I never actually saw that centralized system at Georgia Tech that was saying, yeah, Billy totally has $1 million. But I didn't need to, because I knew it was there and I could just kind of treat it as a black box. But I learned enough about how you talk to that thing, that what was going on. I didn't really need to know the details. I basically took the system and figured out what are all these things and how do they talk. If A talks to B and B talks to C, and C always trusts that it gets this thing from B, but it really shouldn't, because I kind of control that because I can do things to A, you start kind of figuring things out. And so really what I'm trying to get at is that hacking, it's just applied critical thinking and cognitive skills. It's the scientific method. It's coming up with a hypothesis. What happens if I cross these wires? I don't know. Also helps to be pretty curious. I'll give a great example since some of you all are students. As I was pacing in that hallway, there's in the middle of it, between the chorus room and the orchestra room, there's this like 12-inch by 12-inch metal plate that's like screwed to the ground, and it felt kind of hollow, and it's held on with Phillips head screws, and I'm just sitting there walking, I'm like, I wonder what's under that plate. It's kind of interesting. I kind of want to know what's under that plate. So just being curious and then go, I don't know, maybe we should go see what's under that plate. That's always a really good place to start too. But being able to synthesize information, process information, form hypotheses, test hypotheses, and basically apply cognitive skills, that's all hacking is. Now this is a really cool thing, because if you like that sort of thing, you like those kind of brain teasers, you don't just have to go into computers or into hacking, because all of those skills, they apply everywhere. Business consultants. Business consultants literally are paid to come into a company, look at some system, right? Logistics or cash flow or accounting, really boring sounding things. But all they're doing is saying, wait a minute, there's a system, things are flowing through it, where are the inefficiencies? Where are things working the way maybe they shouldn't properly work? And then they get paid to say, yeah, you should fix that part right there. Business consultants are basically the hackers of the business world. Medical doctors, differential diagnostics, right? What's going on with this person? Is this different from their otherwise unhealthy lifestyle? What's happening? They're kind of, medical detectives. And in fact, detectives are a perfect example. Police detectives, right? They're dealing with people that are lying to them. They don't have all the information. They're trying to figure out what's going on, and they have to make hypotheses and go try to collect information and test it. So all of these skills, fundamentally, everybody here can do. So if you can only take 2 things away from this talk, recognize that everybody here can totally do all the hacking that I did. You might think not, but it just takes time, and it's all the skills you already know how to do. It's just implementing them. And 2, you don't have to just do hacking. If you can be a hacker, you can actually have any sort of profession that you want. Thank you. I think he's supposed to come through there.
My first question is, you went to Walton. How did you get so cool?
That's a weird question.
I bet it is.
I think if there's something, I was actually talking with my wife about this before I came up here to speak. I actually was talking about you, Sam, and I said, she's like, is there somebody introducing you? I'm like, yeah, there's this guy, Sam. He's delightfully dorky. And I say that in a truly way, because I think in the last 20 years or so, people that are interested in kind of weird esoteric things, or people that they like technology, or they like whatever it is, we've seen a great kind of equalizing in that, hey, it's okay to like whatever you like and to do whatever you do, and your hobby doesn't have to be sports or this, right? Like drama wasn't particularly popular when I was here. Maybe it is more so now, but I feel that people they're more understanding of what people like and don't like, and so I think that you only think I'm cool because it's cooler now than it was 20 years ago to be into technology. Like I'm still by the scale of when I went here, I'm still as nerdy as I ever was, but just that's more acceptable, I guess.
Have you ever thought about teaching computer science or anything like that?
I think teaching is super important. I had a lot of great professors at Tech, and I think the key is that it's trying to maintain that energy level and that passion and that curiosity, and that those are things that you shouldn't suppress. If maybe, I don't know how, you can't really be super creative in trigonometry, right? Like the theorems, but like if you can find a hobby or a channel or something that lets you do what it is you enjoy, I think that's key until you can find kind of like teachers or subject matters that sort of foster whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Everyone give it up for Billy Hoffman.